6 o'clock this morning all across the state, and they closed down just about 15 minutes ago at 8 o'clock. Joining me now is Secretary of the State Denise Merrill. And Denise, welcome. Thank you for being here. I know Connecticut, in some places we've had some pretty high turnout. Other places maybe not so much, right?
Yeah, that's kind of typical of local elections. Of course, they're very local. So it depends if there's anything controversial going on, or, if there's high turnout for any reason. Sometimes there's a local controversy, as in West Haven this year. But as you just heard, there are some hot spots for sure.
Yeah, and how are things how have things gone just procedurally? Were the polls, did everything work well? Did ballots work well? We've had a lot of absentee ballots. Did you see that a lot of people use those like they did last year?
Yeah, I think that is what we're going to see. We got those reports kind of as we were going along. Last year, as you know, was the high watermark for voting in Connecticut. In 2020, we had the highest voter turnout ever and the highest number of registered voters. So those people are still on the rolls, but you won't see quite the turnout that you did in 2020. But the use of absentee ballots is reportedly like tenfold what it was in most normal elections like this. But of course, this year is the final year, probably, that everyone can use an absentee ballot based on their fear of getting COVID. So there are still people that don't want to go to the polling place. They have a right to vote. So we allowed them to use COVID as sickness and be an excuse, as we call it, for getting an absentee ballot. I'm very much hoping that in the future, we can do a constitutional amendment to allow Connecticut to join the other 43 states that allow people to get absentee ballots for any reason.
Yeah, is that something that, I guess, we're also talking about early voting and with absentee ballots, will that be a question on the 2022 ballot? And can people make that permanent if they want to?
There are two separate questions because, oddly enough, our state constitution had two sections that said, one says you can only vote on Tuesday in November, and the other one lists the excuses that you have to have in order to get an absentee ballot. Most states, anyone can get an absentee ballot. Some states actually mail ballots to people. Here, we don't even mail applications for absentee ballots. So we're very, very strict here. And I think it's time that the voters be allowed to use absentee ballots if they want to and if they choose to, and it's convenient for them. And we saw that in the last couple of years, when we've allowed this due to COVID, lots of people took advantage of it. They're also using the ballot boxes, which was another new feature of our elections. They're used very extensively in most states. And people were using them because they're afraid their ballot won't get back in time. So if you drop it in the drop box, you're sure it gets there. So those are two great things that we did, I think, in the last 2 years. So I'll be very interested to see how many people use absentees this year.
Yeah. And what about just at the polls? Have you had any problems at all? Are you noticing anything wrong at any of the polling stations? Any reports coming into your office?
Very quiet this year. I mean, I like to think that we get better at this every year. I'm not sure, but no, there have been very few problems. A few little glitches here and there, but not much really at all. It's been a quiet year.
Now, we know, Denise, you will be moving on out of this role, and you've been in it. And so what are you most proud of as your time as Secretary of the State?
I think the advances we have made in access to the ballot. When I came into office, you couldn't register to vote online yet. Now you can do it at the DMV. We didn't have election day registration, which is something else we instituted in my time, and a number of other things that involved more training of local officials, and maybe one reason that things are going more smoothly now. And also the way we dealt with the many emergencies that happened during the decade I've been in office. I mean, we had Storm Sandy, we had polling places underwater, then we had COVID. I mean, I think I've had at least 4 major disasters happen during various elections over the last 10 years. And we've gotten a lot better at handling all that.
COVID certainly taught us how to punt and do things differently. We've learned how to Zoom. We've learned how to put 7-year-olds go to school online. Do you foresee that we'll ever have online voting, or are there just too many problems with that?
If we want our vote to be anonymous, I think there's a big hurdle there in trying to maintain some sort of security to your ballot. I'm not a fan of online voting. I am a fan of online registering to vote because it's so easy for people. Maybe, never say never when it comes to computer technology. They could come up with new ways to make us even more sure that our vote is secure, but I doubt it'll be in my lifetime, honestly.
So what can we expect for results tonight? I know because there are some absentee ballots, some of the election returns we're going to be getting may not be complete. Is that right? We're only about 20 minutes past the polls closing. I know people are going to want to know, when are we going to know?
I know we're going to need a little patience because again, this year we allowed the local officials more time to count because we thought there'd be more absentee ballots because of COVID. So it might be a day or so in some cases, although, turnout's been pretty high in some of these places. I saw that Hamden, for example, where there is a race, they were at like 50% turnout in the middle of the day, which is quite high for a local election. So we'll see. But there are a lot of absentee ballots outstanding, and they take much longer to count.
We're actually going to be heading to Guilford soon, too. That's another place I heard because of the Board of Ed issues there. You're seeing very high turnout. And just anecdotally, people have said there have been lines in Guilford and in Old Saybrook.
Wow, that's extraordinary for a local election, actually. But, it just shows when there's a controversy, people want to be heard. That's a good thing.
Yeah, it gets people to turn out. Secretary of the State Denise Merrill, we thank you so much for sharing your time to speak with us, and we're glad to hear that things have gone smoothly for this election day.
Thank you, Kara. Nice to be here. I'll see you around the neighborhood.
Yes. See you on the walks in Elizabeth Park. Okay.